The galaxy had always been noisy. Countless signals filled the void between stars, trade messages, patrol reports, political broadcasts, and endless chatter from hundreds of worlds. But then, one day everything changed. A single new signal appeared at the edge of known space. It was not a message anyone could translate. It was strong, clear, and repeated endlessly. It felt more like a heartbeat than a call. Inside the Galactic Council's central chamber, 100 species gathered to study the strange signal. Holograms floated in the air, displaying its pattern over and over. Technicians worked without rest, trying to decode it. Nothing matched. No known language, no old code, no hidden message. It was completely alien. Whispers filled the room. Some believed it was a distress call. Others thought it was a trap. One elder member, a tall creature with silver skin, stood up and said, "This is not a request. This is a declaration." The chamber fell silent. The council decided to send a probe to investigate. The probe crossed the star border in silence. It streamed back a few images. Dark space, a faint glow, something massive moving slowly in the distance. Then suddenly the signal cut off. No trace remained. The probe was gone. A second probe followed. Then a third. Each disappeared in the same way. There were no explosions, no enemy fire, no warnings. Just sudden, complete silence. The council grew nervous. This had never happened before. Military fleets were gathered. Exploration ships were equipped with heavy weapons. Hundreds of smaller vessels formed into a single large expedition fleet. Their mission was to follow the signal to its source and report back. Many believed it was some unknown phenomenon. A few thought it was an ancient power returning. Most believed they would find nothing at all. Weeks passed as the fleet traveled through empty systems. The signal grew stronger with every jump. The rhythm was deep and steady, like the beating of a giant heart. Even the crews began to feel uneasy. Some said they heard whispers through the comm systems at night, as if someone or something was listening back. Finally, the fleet arrived. Before them floated a structure unlike anything they had ever seen. It was not built like a station or a ship. It looked almost alive, as if grown from dark metal and light itself. Its size dwarfed every vessel in the fleet. It did not move. It did not respond. It simply waited. The fleet's commander ordered scans. The structure returned nothing. No energy readings, no defenses, no transmissions. It was like scanning a ghost. Drones were sent forward. As soon as they entered a certain distance, their signals vanished. It was as if they had been swallowed by the void. Inside the council chamber far away, alien leaders watched the live feed with growing unease. No one understood what they were seeing. Some began to argue. Should the fleet retreat? Should they attack? Others wanted to establish contact. One thing was clear to everyone. This was not a normal discovery. Then, suddenly, the structure came alive. Light ran across its surface like veins lighting up. Massive panels unfolded silently. It began to turn slowly, deliberately facing the fleet. Weapon systems across the fleet powered up at once. A single voice came through the fleet's channel, trembling. "It's moving." Before anyone could react, the fleet's control systems began to fail. Ships drifted off course. Engines shut down. Communications filled with static. Pilots tried to regain control, but their systems were no longer responding. One by one, their ships froze in space, powerless. And then came the silence. A crushing total silence filled the void. The structure extended long, sharp shapes from its sides like wings. A wave of invisible force swept across the fleet. Every ship went dark at the same time. No explosions. No warnings, just darkness. Back in the council chamber, the transmission cut off. All screens went black. No signals returned. The entire fleet, hundreds of ships, was gone. Panic broke out in the chamber. Some shouted for immediate military action. Others demanded to close borders and seal off nearby systems. The council leader stood at the center, her eyes fixed on the empty screen. "Something is coming," she said softly, "and we have no idea what it is." The strange signal changed again. Its rhythm grew faster, louder. It was no longer a distant heartbeat. It was a marching drum, and it was moving toward council space. Throughout the galaxy, news spread quickly. Civilizations watched the growing signal in fear. No one knew who was coming, but everyone could feel it, the arrival of something powerful, something unknown, something that would change everything. Far beyond the edges of their charts, ships unlike any they had ever seen moved through the stars. Their hulls were cold and metallic, marked with a symbol no alien recognized. These were not explorers. These were not diplomats. The Deathworlders had begun their return. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. For the first time in decades, every seat in the towering chamber was filled. Hundreds of alien leaders and representatives stared at the massive central screen, where a single, blinking red dot marked the location of the vanished fleet. No one spoke at first. The weight of the silence felt heavier than any words. Finally, the council leader stood. Her voice echoed through the hall. "We sent 3 probes and a fully armed fleet. None returned. We have lost communication with every vessel. This is not a malfunction. Something is out there." Her words spread like fire through the chamber. Panic rippled among the delegates. Some slammed their hands on the table, demanding war. Others begged for retreat and isolation. One alien, with long black tendrils across its shoulders, shouted, "This is how empires fall. We must strike before it reaches us." Another voice countered, "Strike at what? We don't even know what it is." As debates grew heated, a faint transmission suddenly appeared. The room went silent. Technicians quickly stabilized the signal. It was coming from one of the fleet's ships, the cruiser Valiant Sun. The image flickered, static covering half the screen. A trembling alien officer appeared, his eyes wide with terror. "It's not a weapon. It's something else," he whispered. "It didn't fire. It just took control. Our engines, our navigation, everything. We couldn't fight it. We couldn't run, and then we saw them." His voice broke. The image blurred. "They're not like us. They're coming." The signal ended abruptly. No coordinates, no rescue beacon, just silence once more. The Council quickly formed a second fleet, larger, stronger, with warships from multiple star systems. This time, they sent not just explorers, but destroyers, carriers, and elite strike teams. Their mission was clear: intercept whatever was coming, identify it, and if necessary, destroy it. The fleet assembled at the border system of Varnis Prime, a quiet star near empty space. The strange signal had moved steadily toward this system, like a predator stalking its prey. On board the warships, soldiers prepared nervously. They had never fought anything unknown. Most wars in the galaxy were predictable. Disputes over resources, border clashes, power struggles. This was different. Commander Selvar, a seasoned military leader from the Creel species, stood on the bridge of the flagship. Her 4 golden eyes scanned the dark screen ahead. "Hold formation," she ordered. "Do not fire unless we are attacked. We are here to learn, not to die." Hours passed. The signal grew louder. Then, without warning, something emerged from the void. At first it looked like a cluster of shadows. Then lights flickered across its surface. 1, 2, 5. 10 massive ships came into view, their metallic hulls reflecting the distant starlight like blades. They moved in perfect silence, in perfect formation, like hunters approaching a kill. The alien fleet powered up their shields. The lead ship broadcast a series of standard greeting signals. No reply. "Try again," Selva ordered. Another message was sent. Still nothing. The unknown ships simply advanced, slow and steady, as if they didn't care who was watching. Suddenly, the unknown fleet stopped. For a moment, the stars were silent again. Then every alien ship's system started to glitch. Radar screens flashed, engines sputtered, communications filled with static. One pilot shouted, "They're inside our systems." Panic broke out across the fleet. Some captains tried to retreat. Others locked weapons on the unknown ships. Commander Selva barked out orders to hold the line, but it was too late. One destroyer opened fire. A single plasma volley streaked across space and hit the lead unknown ship dead on. The explosion lit up the stars. But when the light faded, the ship was unharmed, not even a scratch. And then the response came. The unknown ships emitted a burst of energy, silent, invisible to most senses, but strong enough to hit every vessel at once. Shields collapsed. Engines died. One by one, alien ships drifted helplessly. The entire fleet had been neutralized in seconds without a single direct shot. Inside the council chamber, the live feed turned chaotic. Screams, alarms, static, then black screens. One final image remained for a few seconds. A shadow of a massive ship moving past the wreckage of alien vessels, its shape cold and deliberate. And then the feed ended. Commander Selvar's ship was one of the last to lose power. She stood on the bridge, staring out at the silent giants approaching. Her officers looked at her with fear. She whispered, "This is not conquest. This is demonstration." Across the galaxy, messages spread faster than light. The second fleet is gone. They didn't even fight. They just took everything. Worlds began to panic. Some fortified their defenses. Others prepared to evacuate entire star systems. Religious groups started calling the unknown force the Returners. Scientists dug through ancient archives, searching for anything similar. In the middle of this rising fear, one historian found something buried deep in the Council's oldest records, an ancient reference to a species from a dangerous blue planet. A species once considered too violent to join the galactic community. They had vanished long ago, leaving only myths behind. The file had one word: Deathworlders. The council leader read it carefully, her heart pounding. "If this is true," she said, "then they are not new. They are returning." The signal continued its march forward, system by system, like a warning drum. The unknown fleet did not communicate. It did not destroy planets. It simply moved forward, taking control wherever it went, leaving silence behind. The galaxy was no longer watching a mystery. It was watching the approach of something it once tried to forget. Humanity was coming back, and no one was ready. The fall of the Second Fleet sent shockwaves across the stars. News spread like wildfire. Entire civilizations tuned their comm networks to emergency channels. Holographic screens filled streets and plazas on countless worlds, all showing the same chilling footage. Alien warships drifting helplessly as a line of cold, unknown vessels passed through them like shadows. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council declared a full red alert. Every species, from the oldest and most powerful to the youngest colonies on the frontier, received the same message. An unknown power is moving toward central space. All member worlds are advised to prepare for potential contact. The panic was immediate. On industrial planets, factories worked day and night to build defense platforms. On peaceful garden worlds, citizens lined up to evacuate. Trade routes collapsed as merchants refused to travel near the signal's path. The usual endless chatter of galactic life was replaced by a single question whispered in fear: who are they? In the dark council chamber, the leaders gathered again. This time, there was no loud debate, only grim faces and whispered plans. "Two fleets have vanished," one ambassador said quietly. "Our ships never even scratched them. If this continues, they'll reach the inner systems in weeks." Another voice replied, "We must make contact before they arrive. If we wait, they will choose the terms." An elder species representative, with skin like cracked stone and deep glowing eyes, leaned forward. "I have heard this rhythm before," he said slowly. "Long ago. When my world was young." The chamber turned silent. It was in the old archives, a signal from a species that lived on a world of storms and fire. They were called Deathworlders. The word spread through the chamber like a cold wind. Many had heard the legends, but dismissed them as myth. Stories of violent beings from a distant blue star system who joined the galactic network for a short time, only to vanish after terrifying the council with their dangerous nature. No one ever confirmed what happened to them. Most believed they destroyed themselves. But they were human, were they not? Someone whispered. "Yes," the elder said, "humans. The ones who adapted to death itself." Across the galaxy, different civilizations responded in their own way. The Xi Collective, known for their aggressive military, launched their entire armada toward the edge of Council space, determined to confront the incoming force. The gentle Eliari, a peaceful, star-faring culture, began evacuating their people to hidden colonies. The Vurak tribes declared a holy war, believing the Deathworlders were divine punishment. On border worlds, everyday people felt the change long before any fleets arrived. Communication systems flickered at night. Strange vibrations passed through the ground as if distant engines were humming beneath their feet. Space stations near the signal's path reported strange sightings, giant silhouettes drifting between stars, always silent, never answering hails. Meanwhile, the signal itself changed again. Its once slow, heartbeat-like rhythm began to shift into something sharper, like a steady war drum. It no longer sounded distant. It sounded closer. On the Council's intelligence deck, analysts tracked the movement carefully. One by one, outlying systems went dark. No explosions, no battles, just sudden silence. It was as if the unknown fleet simply passed through and switched everything off. "They are not destroying worlds," one analyst said. "They are disabling everything." Scans, defenses, comms, gone. Like flipping a switch. The Council leader stared at the glowing star map. A red line traced the path of the Deathworlder fleet. It was moving straight toward the Council's home system. She clenched her fists. "They're not hiding. They want us to know they're coming." In an attempt to slow them down, the Council launched the Sentinel Wall, a chain of heavily fortified defense stations stretched across a strategic star lane. It was the largest single defensive structure ever built in peacetime. Each station carried weapons that could tear asteroids apart, shields that could withstand stellar flares, and garrisons of elite soldiers. For 3 days, the galaxy watched as the unknown fleet approached the wall. Millions tuned in live. Soldiers stood ready. Commanders swore they would not fail. The first contact was eerie. The fleet didn't fire. It didn't send warnings. It simply advanced. Station weapons opened fire in unison. Blinding beams and missiles filled space. When the light faded, the Deathworlder ships kept moving, untouched. The station switched to emergency defense. Shields flared, systems jammed. One by one, the stations went offline, their lights winking out like dying stars. It was over in minutes. Millions of viewers across the galaxy watched the broadcast in silence. What they had thought was their strongest defense line had been swept aside like dust. There was no heroic last stand, no great battle, just quiet, terrifying efficiency. That night, the galaxy didn't sleep. On frontier planets, families stared up at alien skies and wondered if the unknown ships would arrive before morning. On military worlds, soldiers checked their weapons with shaking hands. Even the oldest empires, who had ruled for thousands of years, felt something they hadn't in generations: fear. The Council met again in the early hours. Some demanded surrender. Others argued to keep fighting. But one question drowned out all others. Why are they coming back now? The Council leader stood at the center, looking at the red line on the star map. "They are not here to ask," she said. "They are here to remind us." Beyond the stars, the Deathworlder fleet adjusted course. Their formation was deliberate, almost ceremonial. They were no longer a distant myth. They were close, so close that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The panic had become something else now. It wasn't just fear of the unknown. It was fear of a power the galaxy had once known and tried to forget. Humanity was no longer approaching quietly. Humanity was announcing its return. The signal finally stopped. For weeks, the entire galaxy had listened to its growing rhythm, felt its slow but steady advance. And then, without warning, the sound that had echoed through every star system went silent. No one knew why. Some believed the threat had ended. Others whispered that the silence was worse, that it meant they had arrived. In the command center of the Galactic Council, hundreds of officers stared at their screens. The star map showed a line of blinking red systems that ended just beyond the border of Council space. "They've stopped," one technician whispered. There, holding position, the Council leader stood at the center of the chamber, staring at the frozen red line. "No fleet this powerful stops without a reason," she said quietly. "They're waiting." High above the core world, in orbit around the capital planet, the Council's Grand Defense Fleet assembled. Thousands of ships floated in tight formation, battlecruisers, carriers, frigates, stealth ships, and ancient dreadnoughts that hadn't been deployed in centuries. Every weapon was armed. Every shield was active. The fleet stretched so far across space that it glimmered like a net of stars. This was the strongest military force ever gathered by the Council. But none of the captains felt safe. Every encounter so far had ended in silence and failure. No one had seen the enemy clearly. No one had survived to describe them. They were facing shadows that moved like gods. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Watch, Admiral Tarek adjusted his uniform and looked out the viewport. He was a stern alien with dark, scaled skin and cold blue eyes. He had commanded fleets against pirates, rebels, and warlords. But this felt different. "Hold the line," he told his officers. "No one fires without my command." Then the stars shifted. Sensors picked up movement at the edge of the system. A tear of light appeared in the dark, like the fabric of space itself had been cut open. One by one, massive ships emerged from the void. Their hulls reflected starlight like polished blades. Their designs were unfamiliar, sharp, angular, built for function over beauty. There were no decorative fins, no glowing emblems like council ships. These were built to survive, not impress. As the ships aligned into formation, one detail sent chills through the entire fleet. A blue and white emblem painted boldly on each hull. A circular design with simple lines and stars. A symbol pulled from forgotten archives. It was not alien. It was human, impossible. Admiral Tarek whispered. Holographic displays across the council chamber zoomed in on the emblem. Ancient historians pulled up old records. It matched perfectly with one of the oldest species to ever interact with the council, humans, from a violent blue planet long thought destroyed or lost. "They're Deathworlders," an aide said, her voice trembling. "It's them." The unknown fleet did not advance further. It stopped at the border of council space, perfectly lined up. The ships hung in the void, silent and still, like predators watching from the shadows of the trees. The council immediately sent a diplomatic signal. It was the standard first contact message. Peaceful greeting, identity request, coordinates for dialogue. No response. A second message followed. Silence. A third, more direct, demanding communication. Again, nothing. "They're ignoring us," Admiral Tarek muttered. Inside the council chamber, panic and confusion grew. "Why aren't they answering?" one representative demanded. "Are they preparing to attack?" "No," the council leader replied. "They're waiting." For 2 days, the Deathworlder fleet remained motionless. Scouts tried to approach, but every time a council ship crossed a certain invisible line, their systems shut down and they drifted helplessly back. No shots were fired. No threats were spoken. The humans didn't need to act. Their presence alone was enough. In the cities below, ordinary citizens gathered in public squares, watching the skies and news feeds. The fleet had become a terrifying constellation, visible even through civilian telescopes. Children pointed at the strange shapes. Adults whispered old stories about the humans, stories their grandparents said were just legends. Finally, on the 3rd day, the silence broke. Across every screen, on every ship, and in every city, a single broadcast appeared. No council code, no encryption, just a simple message in clear, perfect Galactic standard language. A human voice spoke. "We are not here to conquer. We are not here to beg. We are here to remind you who we are." The image that followed was brief but unforgettable. A human stood on a command bridge, dressed in dark, practical clothing. Behind him, windows showed a massive fleet, stretching beyond the horizon. His eyes were calm, steady. "You forgot us," the voice continued, "but we did not forget what you did. We remember everything, and now, so will you." The transmission ended. The chamber was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The council leader slowly sat down, her face pale. "They know," she whispered. "They remember." Across the galaxy, reactions were immediate. Some civilizations celebrated. The return of humanity meant the balance of power might shift away from the Council's dominance. Others fortified their defenses, terrified that the old legends were real. Rebel groups saw opportunity. Loyal Council worlds feared betrayal. Meanwhile, the human fleet remained still. No invasion, no bombardment, just presence, as if daring the galaxy to make the first move. On the flagship Eternal Watch, Admiral Tarek stared at the human ships through the viewport. "They could have attacked," he said quietly. "But they didn't. This is worse. They want us to think. They want us to remember. The arrival of the Deathworlders was no longer a rumor, no longer a distant signal. It was real. Humanity had returned to the galactic stage, not with diplomacy and not with destruction, but with a single, undeniable message. They were back, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy held its breath. The Deathworlder fleet floated at the edge of Council space like a silent wall of steel and purpose. Days passed. No shots were fired. No new messages came. It was as if humanity had drawn a line in the stars, daring anyone to cross it. On the surface of the Council's capital world, life had slowed to a crawl. Streets were quiet. People stayed close to their homes, staring at the sky and the constant news broadcasts. Schools were closed. Trade routes remained frozen. Everyone knew something was coming. They just didn't know when. In orbit, the Grand Defense Fleet held its position. Thousands of ships waited under strict orders: do not engage, do not provoke. Admiral Tarek stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Watch, watching the human ships through the main viewport. They hadn't moved in days, but their formation was perfect, precise, almost predatory. "They're watching us," one of his officers muttered. "No," Tarek replied. "They're studying us." Inside the council chamber, debates raged day and night. Some wanted to open formal negotiations immediately. Others believed showing weakness would invite destruction. A few suggested attacking before the humans could fully act, but their voices were drowned out by fear. "They have done nothing aggressive," one ambassador said. "They could have destroyed our fleets and our wall without effort. But they didn't. Why? Because they don't need to," replied the council leader. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "This is a show of power. They're forcing us to act first." On the third day of silence, the council finally agreed to send a diplomatic envoy. A small, unarmed vessel launched from the capital, carrying ambassadors from multiple species. As it approached the invisible border between council space and the human fleet, tension on every ship rose. The envoy crossed the line. Immediately, their systems flickered. Power dimmed. Communications cut off for a moment, but the ship didn't stop. Instead, a narrow channel opened from the human side. A single message came through: "Proceed." It was the first time the humans had responded directly. The envoy continued slowly toward the largest human vessel, a massive flagship unlike anything in the Council's records. Its dark hull had no decorative lights or banners. It gave off no unnecessary energy signatures. It simply existed like a mountain in space. When the ambassadors entered, they were met not by holograms or drones, but by humans in person. They were tall, their faces calm and serious. They wore simple dark uniforms, not ceremonial robes. Their eyes carried the weight of something old, something hardened by struggle. The lead ambassador, a frail insectoid creature with translucent wings, spoke first. "We come in peace. We wish to understand your intentions." The human representative, a woman with sharp eyes and a scar running down her jaw, studied them silently for several seconds before answering. "We have no interest in war," she said. "But we have not forgotten." "What do you mean?" Another ambassador asked nervously. The human's expression didn't change. "Your council judged us long ago. You called us dangerous, unfit. You tried to isolate us. And when we refused to change, you cut us off. You erased us from your maps." Whispers filled the envoy chamber. The old records told of humanity's removal from the network, but no one alive had ever witnessed it. "We survived," the woman continued, "alone, on a death world. For centuries, we built our strength, our knowledge, and our fleets. We returned not for conquest, but for clarity. We want the galaxy to remember what it chose to forget." Back in the council chamber, the transmission from the envoy was broadcast live. Leaders listened in tense silence. This was not the speech of conquerors. It was the voice of someone holding a mirror to history. Admiral Tarek watched too, his jaw tightening. "They're not here to take planets," he muttered. "They're here to change everything." The envoy continued its meeting for hours. The humans explained little. They answered some questions, but avoided others. When asked about their fleet's power, they simply said, "We are prepared to defend ourselves." When asked why they had disabled fleets and stations instead of destroying them, the answer was simple: because we do not need to destroy what we can control. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't interested in burning the galaxy. They were interested in reshaping it. As the envoy returned home, the council erupted into chaos. Some saw opportunity. If humanity could be negotiated with, perhaps alliances could be forged. Others saw doom. If humans had returned to claim leadership, then no one would be able to stop them. The council leader called for silence. "Listen," she said. "They didn't attack us. They're waiting for our choice. This is not a war, not yet. It's a standoff. Whoever moves first decides the future of the galaxy." Meanwhile, on the Eternal Watch, Admiral Tarek received a private transmission. It came from an unknown source inside the human fleet. A single line appeared on his screen: "The past always returns. Be ready." He stared at it for a long time. The standoff dragged on. Humanity waited. The galaxy trembled. No one knew if the next step would be diplomacy or fire. But one thing was certain now: this was no longer a mystery. The Deathworlders were here, and they were forcing the galaxy to look into its own past. The question was no longer who they were, it was what would happen next. The return of humanity had frozen the galaxy in a state of tense silence. Two fleets faced each other across a border of stars, neither moving, neither firing. The Deathworlders waited like patient predators, and the Galactic Council struggled to find a way to respond without triggering war. Then everything changed in a single moment. It began with a miscalculation, or perhaps a desperate act. A faction known as the Xi Collective, known for their aggressive military pride, grew impatient with the Council's endless debates. Convinced that the humans were bluffing, the Xi launched a sudden strike without warning. A formation of 20 Xi destroyers broke formation and sped toward the human fleet. In the council chamber, alarms rang out. "Xi Collective ships are advancing," shouted a technician. "Stop them," the council leader ordered. But it was too late. The Xi ships fired a barrage of plasma torpedoes and focused energy beams, the kind of attack that could tear apart a moon. The glowing streams crossed the void in seconds, slamming into the front line of the human formation. The impact created a blinding light that lit up the entire border zone. For 3 long seconds, everyone thought the impossible might have happened. Then the light cleared. The human ships were untouched. Their shields had absorbed the attack completely, silent, perfect like a wall of iron and light. Not even scorch marks remained on their hulls. The humans responded immediately, not with chaos, not with rage, but with cold, terrifying precision. A ripple of energy pulsed from the human flagship. One by one, the Xi destroyers' engines shut down. Their weapons powered off. Their shields collapsed. They drifted helplessly like toys tossed into the void. Then a second pulse struck, not destructive but surgical. It sliced through the attackers' targeting systems and comm arrays, leaving them blind and silent. The entire Xi fleet was neutralized in less than 10 seconds without a single explosion. Across the galaxy, billions watched the live feed in stunned silence. The Council's most unpredictable military force had been completely disarmed, like children trying to fight giants. The Council leader stared at the display, her hands trembling slightly. "They didn't destroy them," she whispered. "They could have, but they didn't." Then the humans moved. For the first time since their arrival, the Deathworlder fleet advanced, not in a chaotic rush, but in a slow, deliberate glide forward. Their ships parted around the drifting Xi vessels like water flowing around stones. Their course was set directly toward the Council's capital system. Panic swept through the chamber. "They're advancing!" "Do we fire?" "Evacuate the capital." Admiral Tarek stood at the center of the command deck, eyes fixed on the incoming fleet. He had been trained for every kind of battle, but this wasn't a battle. This was history rewriting itself. "Hold fire," he said firmly. "If they wanted to destroy us, they already would have. The human fleet stopped just outside the range of the Council's defense platforms. Then a single transmission was sent to every ship, station, and city across the galaxy. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't hidden. It was meant for everyone. A human voice spoke, calm and steady. "We did not come to burn your worlds. We came to remember, and to make sure you remember too. The galaxy forgot what strength looks like. It will not forget again." The message continued. "We do not seek your thrones. We do not ask your permission, but the time when you could erase us from your maps is over. We have returned, not to kneel but to stand." The transmission ended with the display of the human emblem, blue and white, glowing like a new star. The council chamber erupted. Some ambassadors demanded surrender. Others called for alliances. A few whispered of rebellion against the humans. But beneath all the noise, one truth settled over everyone like a shadow. The balance of power had shifted forever. In the following days, the galaxy began to change. Some civilizations immediately opened talks with the humans, seeking to ally with the new power. Others fortified their borders, terrified of what might come next. Trade routes slowly reopened, but now they moved cautiously around human patrol paths. The Xi Collective, humiliated and powerless, signed a ceasefire agreement with the humans within a single day. Their military leaders, once feared across entire sectors, now spoke with quiet voices. The council had no choice but to invite human representatives to the central chamber. When the human delegation entered, they didn't wear royal robes or grand uniforms. They walked with silent confidence, their presence alone enough to quiet the entire room. The council leader met their gaze. "What do you want?" she asked. The lead human answered simply, "A seat and a voice. Nothing more and nothing less." And so, humanity returned not through conquest, but through power and memory. The galaxy had tried to bury them in history. Instead, they rose from the edges of space stronger than ever and forced every civilization to remember what it meant to face Deathworlders. The standoff was over. The new era had begun. Stars shifted. Alliances trembled. The council itself would never be the same. The humans had not needed to fire a single shot to change the galaxy. They had only needed to arrive.